welcome back to Money Talks with Mia. I'm Mia Lee, escort, stripper, CPA, and recovered banker. We've made it to part 3 of 3 of taxes for sex workers. Just like the last episode, I'm going to give you a bullet point list of considerations and we're going to discuss them. The first thing I want to delve a little deeper into is your home office deduction if you qualify for one. Remember that you can only claim a home office deduction if you have duplicative space. For example, a separate bedroom and or a separate bathroom, like in my case. If you use this separate space for work purposes and for a hobby, you can only claim the portion that is used for your work. Let's put some numbers to this example. Let's say your total apartment rent is $4,000 and you have a 2-bedroom apartment. You have a guest room that you use for client in-calls, which is 15% of the square footage of your apartment. Now, let's also say that you use that second bedroom for both in-calls and painting is a hobby and you don't sell your paintings. Your deduction for that home office is going to be $420 a month. That's $4,000 times 15% for the square footage and 70% for the proportion of use toward your income generating job. Now, if you sell your paintings, you would deduct the $420 against your sex work income and you would deduct the 30% of use of that second bed toward your painting business against your painting income. But if painting is a hobby, you can only deduct the portion that is used for income generating business activities. Another advantage of having a home office and claiming a home office expense is actually travel expense deductibility. IRS guidance allows us to claim travel expenses from our office to a client's location, but not our daily commuting cost to and from work. What that means is if you had a job as a personal assistant and you went to an office every day for work, you couldn't really claim your daily commuting cost. Similarly, if you don't have a home office as a sex worker, then your home office is wherever you happen to be working, which means that if you take an Uber from your apartment in Brooklyn to a client's hotel in the financial district, that's basically a daily commuting cost because your office is wherever you happen to be working. And that's not going to be deductible because you don't have a home office. Now, if you have a home office, the reason your commuting costs are deductible, say to a client's hotel or apartment or restaurant or whatever, is because that now counts as commute from your office to another location for work purposes. I bring this up because when you do your tax calculation, it might be worthwhile for you to actually upgrade, if you can afford it, to a space that has an allowable home office deduction because your after-tax cost might make it worthwhile to both claim the deduction in and of itself, but also to claim your travel expenses. For instance, my apartment is $8,600. 1/3 of that is deductible for the square footage of my guest bathroom and bedroom. Then I'm also claiming any of my commuting costs to and from wherever I meet my clients if it's not an in-call. When I add up the total tax consequence of that, it basically comes out to the same money as if I had a 1-bedroom apartment that was, say, $5,000 a month. I basically get a nicer apartment and I get a tax write-off that makes it financially equivalent for me to have a 1-bedroom with no home office versus a 2-bedroom that qualifies as a home office. That's a calculation you might want to consider running or having your tax professional run for you to determine if it's worth it for you to upgrade to a space that has a qualifying home office. Now I want to talk about deducting travel, meals, and entertainment costs. The rules around these deductions can be a little bit nuanced and have undergone some changes, particularly with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or TCJA, of 2017 and subsequent legislation. Here's a breakdown of some of the general rules that apply to us. Travel expenses are going to be the most straightforward. These are costs relating to travel for business outside of your normal work area, which is typically your home city or sometimes your home state. They can include airfare, hotel stays, car rentals, and other transportation related to your business activities outside of your home area. To qualify, the travel must be primarily for business, although you can combine business with pleasure as long as the primary purpose of your trip is business related. These expenses are typically 100% deductible, and I'll talk about a couple of exceptions later on. Meals are going to be trickier. Generally, you can deduct only 50% of the cost of meals when traveling for business or when dining with clients or colleagues. The 100% deduction that you might see in your tax software actually refers to meals with employees. Since most of us don't have W-2 employees, that's not going to apply to us. Our meals with clients and when traveling on tour or with colleagues are going to fit in the 50% deduction category. There were some temporary changes to this meal deduction aimed at helping restaurants during COVID-19. For the tax years 2021 and 2022, businesses could deduct 100% of their food and beverage expenses, provided they were incurred at a restaurant. Prior to 2018, you could deduct 50% of your entertainment expenses directly related to your business or incurred immediately before or after business activities. These are things like sporting events, theater tickets, golf outings, and other forms of entertainment, but these can no longer be deducted after 2018, even if they're business related. Again, the exceptions for these relate to employees. Since most of us don't have employees, doesn't apply to us. Another thing I want to discuss is tracking and deducting your vehicle expenses. If you use your vehicle for work, you have two options for deductions. The more beneficial one is going to be the standard mileage deduction, which is 65.5 cents per mile in 2023 and 67 cents per mile in 2024. You can also deduct, instead of mileage, the actual expenses. So these are your maintenance, gas, depreciation, etc. But you're going to have to allocate these to the portion of your car that is used for work. For most of us, it's both cleaner and more financially beneficial to take the mileage deduction because it's easier to determine the miles that you drove to a hotel or client's home than to say, oh, I absolutely use my car 30% for work. The mileage deduction is going to be both more beneficial and easier to track. I'd recommend that one. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize they can deduct are professional development and training costs. If you took a BDSM course or you bought educational materials, you went to an ADN conference, all of these are deductible professional development and training costs. The airfare, accommodations, and meals when traveling to see clients are deductible, as I mentioned before. I want to also go into the nuance of the hybrid work and pleasure trip. We're going to put an example to this. Let's say Jane is a provider who went on tour. Jane lives in New York. Jane went to San Diego for 7 days. She saw clients on 3 of those days and spent 4 nights and days hanging out with her friends. Jane can deduct 3/7 of her airfare because that's the portion that was allocable to work. She can deduct the 3 nights that she stayed in hotels to see clients, and she can deduct her meals only on the days that she was working. The rest of those expenses are not going to be deductible because that's personal. And the last thing I want to discuss is income earned in other states. You have to file an income tax return in every state that you worked in and earned money in. One of the many reasons you want to do this is that if you, say, live in New York and you are deducting airfare and hotel expenses in Colorado, well, you can't really do that unless you had income in Colorado to claim that against. Aside from that, you're just supposed to claim income in every state that you worked in. That concludes my 3-part episode on taxes for sex workers. Thank you for bearing with me through a very dry topic. I hope you found this helpful. Now you can leave me all of your comments, questions, suggestions for future content, questions about what's deductible and what's not, anything else you might want me to answer. I'm Mia Lee. You can take the girl off Wall Street, but you can't take the banker out of the whore.